Hello, everybody. This is the Catholic Esquire. As many of you know, I've had many videos, and this channel is essentially dedicated to promoting traditional Catholicism, which basically means real Catholicism. That's what I have found in the last few years is that, unfortunately, since the Second Vatican Council, there's been a divergence between what those who claim to be in the hierarchy teach and what the church has always taught as part of her doctrine. And that's why the church is in a crisis today. It is in a crisis, and we are in crisis mode because for the first time, really, in history, you have a situation where those who have legitimate authority, who would normally have legitimate hierarchical authority, are teaching something that's not just novel and new, but actually contrary to the doctrine of the church. And the beauty of the Catholic Church through all of this, of course, is that as lay people, we don't have to make any formal judgments or anything like that. We can know just by reading catechisms of the past, by reading the documents from the councils and prior popes, we know what the doctrines of the church are. And when we hear something that's contrary to it, that's erroneous, that's heretical, we can see right in front of us using our intellect in our brains that what we're hearing is false. And many people are realizing this, that since the Second Vatican Council, there's a significant number of teachings that have sprung from that council that are contrary to what the church has always taught. And one of those big topics is this notion of religious freedom. Many of you have bishops, I imagine, parish priests. They'll send out notices and they'll attend ecumenical meetings with people from other religions, and they'll promote this concept of religious freedom, this idea that the government should be hands-free off of all religion and just allow people to practice and teach and believe and promote their own religions in this neutral land of legal neutrality with full endorsement to speak freely and teach your own religions without any infringement by the government or from anyone else. This is a very American idea because it's embedded into our United States Constitution, First Amendment specifically. The problem, of course, with all of this is that our United States Constitution was in part drafted by Freemasons. It was very much promoted and supported and defended, even down to this day, by people who hate the Catholic Church, who hate Jesus Christ, and certainly reject any notion that Christ has a social kingship, any type of authority in civil or secular affairs. What the typical American idea is, and unfortunately, what many bishops today and clergy will teach, pursuant to what they said the Second Vatican Council teaches, and that's what I'm going to get to in a minute here. What you're going to hear is agreement with that notion. You're going to hear ideas that what's most important is equality among religions, that everyone should be able to freely express their own religions and ideas and beliefs and act on them publicly. And what's very interesting to people who come to tradition and who start diving into what the church actually teaches on these things, you will realize that actually the true Catholic Church does not agree with that. In fact, the Catholic Church condemns that notion of religious freedom and has always done so back to the very beginning. What I did was draft an article, an essay about this. You can find it on catholicesquire.org. In that article, and I'll link to it in the description of this video, I lay out not every piece of evidence, but I lay out a pretty consistent line of teachings by popes, by doctors of the church, like St. Thomas Aquinas, from very early times up until essentially the 20th century. And you will see a consistent line of teaching that says that while no one can be forced to convert to the faith, because faith is something that has to be an act of the will, it has to be voluntary. No one can force you to believe in God or to have faith. No, we're not talking about that. While no one can force you to have faith, it absolutely is the role of the state, the government, to promote the true faith, to protect the true faith and the church and the teachings of Jesus Christ in the public sphere. Okay? That's always been the teachings of the church. Now, yes, the church has its authorities and they're primarily responsible for guiding people to heaven. But the civil state, because all authority comes from God ultimately, it's Romans chapter 13. All authority, even civil authority, secular authority, has a duty to promote the common good. And that means not to harm the eternal salvation of souls, but indirectly guiding people in the correct direction towards the salvation of their souls through proper civil laws. And so that's what the teaching of the church has always been. I would encourage you to check out my article on that, where I lay out in the first section that consistent, constant line of teaching that extends almost for 2,000 years, clearly. And then, unfortunately, what happened was at the Second Vatican Council, that all changed, just like a lot of other things change. Because those who infiltrated the church into the hierarchy itself has determined that their goal is to make the church compliant with and pleasing to the modern world. And one of the biggest aspects of that is to deny or implicitly deny that there is no salvation outside of the church. In other words, that you can be saved through other religions, even if you deny Christ's church that he established, that there really is an equality of religions. And most importantly, in the purpose of what Dignitatis Humanae, the document I'm referring to in the Second Vatican Council, what it said is that every person has a natural right to not only believe what religion they want, but to publicly express that religion in a public forum. And what Dignitatis Humanae says is that governments, the state, has no right, has no ability, and should be prohibited from, in the constitutions themselves, from restricting in any way the public expression of false and idolatrous religions. That's what that document says. Now, there's a whole heap of argument from people who believe in this concept of the hermeneutic of continuity, where they try to smooth over, using mental gymnastics, this idea that what the church taught before the Second Vatican Council is the same, really, just more developed a little bit, compared to what's after the Second Vatican Council. But my friends, it just isn't true. We can't lie to ourselves just because that would make it much more convenient, ease our consciences just a little bit, and make us feel better about the people today who currently claim to hold authority in the church. We can't lie to ourselves. Catholics don't do that. What real Catholics do, it's a manly religion. It's not this feminine, this effeminate, wimpy religion where we just make up things to get along with other people. We have to stand up for the truth and it's not charitable to lie to people. And so what I think needs to happen here is we really need to have a discussion about the Second Vatican Council, about the errors, about how it's harmed the faith and our understanding of the faith, and most importantly, how it has real life effects on our everyday lives. Because, my friends, we live in a world where their laws are toxic, they're poisonous. We live in an anti-Christ political ecology where everything is against God and rejects God. And our laws reflect that. Our public laws reflect that. And unfortunately, what happened with Dignitatis Humanae in the Second Vatican Council is it completely cuts Catholics off at the knees on this. in order to fight for the faith, to fight for the gospel, to fight for Jesus Christ and his social kingship. And that's why these things are so important. It's so important that we get it right. I understand it's not very comfortable for some of these priests or even well-known lay Catholic people to get up in front of Protestants and say, hey, I'm sorry, but ideally our nation should be a Catholic state. We should have laws that are grounded in the truths of the faith, including those that promote and defend the Catholic Church, the one true church founded by Jesus Christ. I understand it's not easy to do that. And it's a lot easier just to say, well, since the world's already gone to hell pretty much, we're going to hope for what we can get, and maybe a government that just leaves us alone and lets everybody believe whatever religion they want. Now, traditional Catholicism understands and is very pragmatic. That's what I love about tradition. It's very pragmatic at the same time as holding steadfast to the truth. Pope Leo XIII said, look, I understand the world is dominated by liberals now. I understand we're not always going to be successful in going in with swinging swords and conquering all these governments and making them Catholic governments, especially when most of the people aren't Catholic. That's impractical. That's absolutely true. And so in those situations, what the church says is, well, we can tolerate for a period of time, these governments that refuse to help the church, that allow for the promotion of false religions. We can tolerate that. But my goodness, we can never say that someone has a right to believe in a false God. I mean, that would be completely contrary to the church's mission to say that someone has a right to believe in a false God. That's a violation of the first commandment. That's basically saying you have a right to condemn yourself to hell. How is that possible? So no, my friends, no. The church is very pragmatic on all these things. We can tolerate the situation as we need to do as a matter of prudence, but you do not have a natural right to promote error, to harm other people's souls. And unfortunately, that's what the Second Vatican Council teaches, and that's one of its major primary errors. And so, my friends, I hope this is a nice little introduction. I encourage you to check out my full article on this, where I get into much more detail. I do a breakdown of Dignitatis Humanae in a way probably you may not have seen others do before. And I kind of wrap it up and say, there's some significant consequences to all this, and I try to show you why it matters to our lives today and to the lives of our children. So please check it out. It's at catholicesquire.org. I'll put a link to it in the description. Feel free as well to leave comments on the comment section to this video, and please share with your friends, with your family, and subscribe to the channel, because that always helps. That helps spread the message more throughout the YouTube universe. Thank you for listening. I'm excited about this new project. I'm hoping to do sort of little exposés on other errors of the Second Vatican Council as well in the future. We're going to start with one of the biggest ones, religious freedom, now. And I thank you for listening. God bless, and have a wonderful day.